Okay, hello Bio 2. This is Mr. B, and this is our last video about Chapter 22. We're on Chapter 22, Section 5, and it's entitled Angiosperms, or Flowering Plants. So angiosperms are our flowering plants. So we're going to dive right into it here. And our first point that they're going to give you is the majority of living plant species are flowering plants, or angiosperms. So this is our most common plant type, are the angiosperms. We're going to look at the characteristics of our most common type. First characteristic is they have flowers and fruits. And angiosperms develop unique reproductive organs known as flowers. So flowers aren't just there for us to look at and to think they're pretty. They have a purpose to be reproductive structures. And they are an evolutionary advantage because they attract animals, which then transport pollen from flower to flower. So what that means is they're able to survive. Evolutionarily speaking, they have an advantage because the flowers attract animals, and when the animals come to one flower, they rub off the pollen, and then they take it to another, doing the fertilization for the flower. So the flower doesn't have to do any work to do the fertilization. It is done by the animals. And the flowers, they can also contain ovaries, which surround and protect the seeds. Then after pollination, the ovary develops into a fruit. So what we're eating when we're eating a fruit is a giant plant ovary. So yeah, keep that in mind the next time you're biting into an apple or a strawberry or something like that. Just know you're eating a plant ovary. And then a fruit is a wall of tissue that surrounds a seed, and it protects the seed and aids in its dispersal. So one obvious thing, it protects the seed because it surrounds it, but it aids in its dispersal because whatever eats the fruit is most likely going to eat the plant, or going to eat the seed, and it'll take it and pass it along to a different location. So those are the characteristics of the flowers and the fruits. So now we're going to look at the diversity of the angiosperms. And the first thing is how they're categorized, and they're categorized in many ways. One way being monocots or dicots, woody or herbaceous, annuals, biennials, and perennials. We'll talk about what each one of these words means. And an angiosperm can belong to more than one category. So we can have woody monocots that are biennials, or herbaceous dicots that are annuals, or any combination of those. So they can't just be classified as one or the other. They can be classified in a variety of ways. So monocots and dicots, that's our first one. And we're going to look at what it means to be a monocot or a dicot. And monocots and dicots are named for the number of seed leaves. So seed leaves are just leaves that form inside the seed, and for some reason someone gave them the fancy name of a cotyledon. And monocots, they have one seed, mono meaning one, and dicots have two. And a cotyledon is just the first leaf of the first pair of leaves, is the first leaf or the first pair of leaves produced by the embryo of a seed plant. So look at this visually. Cotyledons, this is again if we took a seed and we sliced it right down the middle. As you can see, one cotyledon, there's just one leaf developing in here, so inside the seed leaf is what a cotyledon is. And then we have two cotyledons developing here, so we have our monocot and our dicot. And this is another look here. You can't see the two cotyledons as well, but this is just some differences between monocots and dicots. Monocots have parallel veins, while dicots have branched. The flowers of monocots are often in multiples of 3. As you can see, this one has 6. And the floral parts are often multiples of 4 or 5. This flower here has 5. And then the monocots, they have vascular bundles scattered throughout the stem. So as you can see, their vascular tissue is kind of random, whereas the vascular bundles are arranged in a ring in dicots. And then the roots, monocots have fibrous root, and dicots have a tap root, which is a long, straight root. We'll talk about what all of this means a little more in depth later, but just know that this is some of the difference between a monocot and a dicot. So I'll make sure I give you guys this chart. So some examples of monocots include corn, wheat, lilies, orchids, and palms. And some dicots include roses, clover, tomatoes, oaks, and daisies. So woody and herbaceous plants. Plants are also categorized by the amount of wood or the woodiness that they have in the stem of their plant. Woody plants are made primarily of cells with thick cell walls that support the plant body, and this would include things like trees, shrubs, and vines. And then plant stems that are smooth and non-woody are characteristics of herbaceous plants. And herbaceous plants do not produce wood as they grow. And these include dandelions, zinnias, and petunias. So these are going to be more like our flowers that we have growing in our gardens, to whereas the woody plants would be like the trees and the shrubs and kind of the bigger, taller things that are kind of harder to cut down, whereas these are I consider to be maybe more delicate things. And so just kind of a couple other little things we're going to talk about. The plant lifespan is determined by genetic and environmental factors. So these were going to be why we have different things called annuals, biennials, and perennials. So these three things right here describing the lifespan that is mentioned before. So annuals are plants that complete a life cycle in one growing season. So that means in 1 year they will grow, they'll complete their life cycle, and then they will die. So annual plants will only live during one growing season. So biennials, bi meaning two, they complete their life cycle in 2 years. In the first year, they germinate and grow roots, shoot stems, and sometimes leaves. In the second year, they grow the new leaves and stems, and then this time they'll produce their flowers and their seeds, but then they die. So even though they'll produce seeds, but then the plants that you originally have will die. So biennials, 2 years. And perennials will just live for more than 2 years. It can be any amount of time. So just know annuals, 1 season, bi, 2, perennials, more than 2. So that is it for chapter 22. Let me know if you have any questions.